Hello, everyone. I am Ariel Berlinski, Director of Marketing here at Movement, giving you the pulse on all things going on in this ever changing industry, what we've been up to at the agency, and talk with some of our top experts here about it all. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on how creative actually gets made. We're going to be diving into what it takes to bring these campaigns to life from the first spark of strategy to the final onset moment. We'll hear from Movement's creative, production, and strategy leads about how we collaborate, what makes our process unique, and how we help brands stand out on social. So, without further ado, I would love it if each of you could introduce yourselves, what you do here at Movement, how long you've been with us, and naming a client project you particularly loved getting to work on since hopping on board.
Hi, I'm Lisa, a group creative director, and I co-lead Movement Storytelling Center of Excellence. I've been with Movement for 9 years, which has given me the opportunity to work on an insane amount of brands. But that's honestly what I love about my time here. I've checked off a lot of firsts with Movement. My favorite is being pulling off a 24-hour live stream for Cricket Wireless. It was essentially a holiday variety show. It was wild and fun and fast and furious, and we won a Guinness World Record for it, which is wild. But this project really just made me fall in love with, surrounding myself with a team of collaborators who always push each other to be their best selves and make the best work.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I am our SVP of production. I have been here for a year, almost, and I've had a lot of great experiences, and gotten to work across a lot of different of the accounts, but particularly Amazon Books has a very soft spot in my heart, and building those shoots up and getting to work with the editorial team and really getting to know how they pick the books and being on those shoots has really been a highlight for me.
All right, hi, I'm Margie. I'm an associate director of strategy. I work on storytelling with Lisa. I have been at Movement for over 4 years now, and something that I love and has persisted throughout my time here is just the pure silliness and fun that our teams bring to the work. I think sometimes in this industry, we forget that the internet is a weird and playful space. So I really cherish those opportunities where we can go there with our brainstorming. And I have had plenty of weird and wonderful brainstorms on our entertainment clients like Bravo, Looney Tunes, Spotify, but The Boys definitely takes the cake, and has permanently altered my brain chemistry as a result.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for those intros. And now we're just going to dive right into it. So, I want to start off talking about the process of creative from idea to impact. And Lisa, I want to pick your brain first and ask, when it comes to social first creative, what does our process look like from the first brainstorm to bringing that final concept to life?
Yeah. Honestly, the first thing that always comes to mind is the Dennis Rodman meme when he's like, click, go back this way, go around. But it's because it's really just the teamwork that, it always starts with everyone getting on the same page, whether that's account, client, strategy, paid, influencer. We're all kind of asking each other the right questions that are surfacing what we're trying to do and how we ultimately want the brand's followers to react. Once we crack that, we brief in the right people. We do a lot of brainstorms at Movement that we open up to the entire agency to join in. And I've always found that that's really, really a strong way to make sure that we're getting, ideas and thoughts, even if it's just like a nugget of something or even just an opinion on something from people who are really interested in the brand or that category or even that platform that we may be trying to execute on. And, when you hear these things from the different people, you just get all the different perspectives and it really makes all the work stronger.
Absolutely. And I know that it can be such a process, right? Trying to ensure that these ideas you're coming up with don't just look good, but that they ladder back up to what our clients' strategic goals and brand voice are. So how do you ensure that?
I think working in advertising and marketing, it really forces you to always ask, why would anyone care about this? And especially working in social, which is just such an extremely saturated space right now, that forces us, at Movement to ruthlessly ask that for every single piece of content that we're making every day. But it is that exercise that keeps things interesting for brands and for followers. So it's our job to really challenge those expectations and flex brand voices in an effort to both, hit the client goals at the end of the day, but not lose sight of who we're actually speaking to and who's following the account and engaging with the account. And when you can find that sweet spot and, have something take off, then you can really start to uncover just a more like active social corner with and for your fans to play in.
That's fantastic. And I think it's important to kind of walk us through an example. I would love to hear more about a recent project that really illustrated that movement style creative approach and what made it different.
Oh, it's a hard one. I think it's easy to maybe think of, things you see in a big social campaign or a recent project that's won an award, but a lot of what everyone in this industry does is making decks. And I think though, like these can honestly be so fun. So I'm going to talk about that. But for instance, like I've just recently done a few quarterly planning presentations, and maybe they're not the sexiest thing, but our approach to these, I think, always makes room for everyone on the team to think creatively and problem solve the story flow, the slide visuals, the headlines. It's not just the writer who's coming in at the 11th hour or the designer who's designing the deck. Like we're all on these calls together thinking about, slide 1 to 50 holistically and talking about it as a team. And I think it's so evident when we present these decks to clients. I think they can really feel it that we've all been involved, at every layer of the process, and we've all collaborated. And ultimately that translates to, a better client agency relationship and better work week after week.
That's so beautifully said. And it really does make all the difference for the team members who are involved, all the way to the clients being able to kind of wrap up the day, having that peace of mind of knowing the elements that bring us together to bring that magic to fruition, and knowing the path to that at the heart is collaboration. It's one of the biggest parts of the process. So how do you and the team work with production and strategy to bring these concepts to life seamlessly?
A lot of honest communication, no egos allowed. Sarah calls out my blind spots all of the time, and I love her for that.
But I also never say no.
Yeah, that is really great. Yeah, but we all loop each other in, constantly into the decisions that we're making along the way versus waiting for formal calendar check-ins. It's a remote environment. You have to just talk to each other constantly. And so a lot of times that means like a quick huddle for a gut check. That's never made a concept worse. It only makes things stronger. And even if that gut check is, hey, I can't stop thinking about this. I think we need more time to find a better location. This isn't hitting our vision. Like, have those real conversations and, admit to yourselves what's not working for the sake of the work.
Absolutely. And so then if a brand is out there and they're watching us right now and thinking, I want that level of creative thinking, what's something about our process that might surprise them?
We don't really operate in silos. I know, of course, we have departments for everything like every other agency, but we've gone, the extra step to really make spaces here like the storytelling team, where you have a director of strategy and a creative director working as a duo on a project and making these brand narratives make sense. I think behind every great idea or award-winning campaign, it's not just the flashy animator who brought it to life. It was actually the creative strategy behind the idea in the first place that helped guide that whole story.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Lisa. It's a thing that constantly blows me away to see how these great minds create such amazing, effective creative every day. And it now makes me want to sink my teeth into bringing campaigns to life with the art and reality, Sarah, of production. So I know that people typically will think of production as just a shoot day, but it's so much more than that, we know. So, what does production actually entail on an average day at Movement from start to finish?
Yes, that is very true, Ariel. Everyone thinks the bright, shiny object of production where you get to go on set and eat craft services. But what production really is production management, right? It's like the planning of things and it's working cross functionally with your teammates. I think one of the reasons why I love being a producer is because I'm a problem solver, and type A. But what it's amazing is that like it's not just live action, especially in this new environment where we're trying to be innovative. It's digital production, it's animation, it's design, it's post production. It's you figuring out how to use AI, figuring out automation workflows, and so production is like this just giant umbrella, and so every day looks different, and it's working with the teams to figure out how we make something happen, how you make something happen quickly, or you make something happen in a budget. And a lot of the times people forget, like, once the day is over, there's still the whole post-production process to go through too. So, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And if you're in monthly content, it becomes like a grind. And so keeping it fun is also really important. So I would say our days are busy, but also really fun.
Thank you for sharing that. I know, and I'm sure our audience would love to know what it's like when you take your team and you're collaborating with creative and strategy to make sure that what's imagined can actually be executed and elevated in real life. So take us through that.
So typically, creative and strategy will have come together and kind of decided on something, and then they'll come to me to gut check ideas about like what's feasible. And what I love about that is we don't come from a place of no. I have a former boss in another life who used to say, start with a yes in your heart. And so that's how I feel when people come to me with an idea. Start with a yes in your heart and then figure out how do we make it happen? And it may not be able to happen exactly the way they want to. And so it becomes a real dialogue. I can think about just even recently on a couple of really great pitches, we've been able to get in the room and really like think through how an idea could really come to life and how it can fit within a budget. And it's just bouncing ideas off of each other. And so Lisa and I spent a lot of time talking about creative and trying to pivot together to make things. And I'm very proud of the work that she and I have done together over the last year.
Me too, Sarah.
We also have gotten to be on set together, which was really fun, where we had to wear white gloves because we didn't want to get smudges on the books for the shoot that we were doing.
All the attention to detail. I love it. So, Sarah, would you mind sharing a moment with us from a recent campaign where production decisions directly shaped the storytelling or success of the work you were creating?
I think instead of a moment, I would more want to talk about how we were doing monthly content, specifically on Amazon Books. We're shooting every month in Chicago, and our ACD on the account is directing, and we've created a really great work stream so that there's enough room for the ACD to have the creative liberties to do what they need to do. And so I think production being so seamless and just being kind of this outer layer, they're able to just get in and work with the talent and not have to worry about everything else. And really just think about the storytelling of it all. I know Lisa and I've talked a lot about how just making production as seamless as possible so the creatives can really just focus on the creative, and that's when things become successful. Yeah, I mean, I just think we're here to be the backbone. We're supposed to kind of be here behind in the hedges, and we just pop up when you need us.
And in that realm, you have these social campaigns that are moving so fast, like speed of lightning fast. So how do you tend to balance agility with that sense of craftsmanship when producing content for multiple platforms across the board?
Well, what's interesting is most people will want to talk to me about what does something cost, right? My question back to them is when do you need it? Where's it going to live? Are we putting paid behind it? And trying to figure out what the end goal is helps me decide how to approach something from just a execution perspective, right? So if something's really fast, but it's going to have a ton of paid media behind it, like that's going to inform what kind of cameras we pick, right? If it's more organic, like that will inform the type of talent we want to pick. And so fast is not always the issue. It's really about making sure that the tool fits the job. And then in terms of fast, what's fast? Everyone wants, you say fast, you say I need it in a day. I'm like, that's slow. You mean you don't need it in an hour? But I like working fast. I think some of the best creative actually comes out when you're working fast because there isn't as much time to kind of noodle on everything. You have to just make decisions.
So thinking about the way that clients see all that you're doing and from their lens, what do you wish more of them understood about what goes into great production and what sets the approach that you and the team here have apart from elsewhere?
I feel really lucky here. Our clients are really understanding. Like they understand production and they're also really open to just the dialogue about how things are made. And um there really isn't a challenge to get them on board. We really like take them in and they just become an extension of the team and we all hold hands together to figure out the problem. And that's actually why I love being at an agency. You really get to just be in it at the beginning of the process and figuring it out with the client together, along with your creatives and your strategists. And I think when you all work together, including the client, that's when the best work happens. Like you all kind of have to move as sort of like a synchronized swim team, So maybe we all just need some of those like swim caps, maybe as our end of year gifts.
I love that.
Yeah, but ideally that's it, really just a team.
It's definitely finding that pulse of synchronicity and learning to put so much trust in your people, in the process, in the partnership, and so much beauty and ease in that process come from being able to kind of sit back and know that all will fall into the right place when you have the right brain power and strategy and mindfulness behind each of the choices. So thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
Now I want to pick Margie's brain as we go through strategy behind the scenes and what insight really fuels creative that performs. So strategy is often the unsung hero of creative. So how does your team help uncover the insights that spark the best ideas?
Well, I wish I had more of a silver bullet answer for this, but I think, like a lot of our conversation here, it's more nuanced. It's kind of like a combination of things. I think Lisa said this earlier, but it comes from being an advocate for the audience that we're trying to reach, which means really sitting with the research and asking ourselves, like, what is the most compelling story that we can tell with this information? And along with that, like she said, will the audience care, or how will this impact them? And I think that effective strategists also really know their creatives really well, and will figure out the best way to present the information in a brief so that it really sinks in. And for me personally, I find that the best ideas come from having that dialogue about the work and not being afraid to butt heads or unpack it together. It's definitely a process.
That it is. Now, what does social first strategy really mean? And how does it differ from that sort of traditional brand planning that a lot of people are used to?
Yeah, I think kind of going back to what I was saying about being champions for the audience, it means having a deep understanding of the people that we're trying to reach. And actually, something that I wish social teams would take from traditional brand planning is audience segmentation. I think because we're all consumers of the internet, we can fall into this mindset that we personally represent the audience, when in fact, the person that we're targeting could have a very different taste, humor, aesthetic preferences than ourselves. And we can do a disservice to the audience and to the brand when we leverage too much of our own POV instead of letting the audience research drive more of that work. But going back to the question specifically, I think that one of the biggest ways that social first strategy differs from traditional brand planning is really because of the KPIs. Brands are looking at conversation volume and engagement, and the best way to deliver on those KPIs for social is to create something that the audience wants to participate with and to co-create from. They're not passively consuming this. Their involvement is actually really important, and we need to be very conscious of how we can bring them into that conversation and to make them feel heard.
Absolutely. Now, I definitely want to pick your brain on hearing an example of when a key audience or platform insight actually shifted the creative direction of a campaign that you happened to work on recently.
Yeah, so a lot of our work involves social listening, which is looking at posts and comments on social platforms to inform our audience research. Again, back to my favorite thing, audiences. Anyways, it's pretty rare for our social listening to be very unified in that people have the same opinion or experience of a particular brand. Or if it is unified, it can be very unusual for that POV to be unanimously positive. And that happened to us for a recent pitch. We had a brand where the POV from users was really unanimous. It was really positive, which was so exciting because it gave us a very clear direction to follow in our strategy and in our creative. And I don't want to say who it was for, but there was this really interesting contradiction between users perceiving this product as ugly, and yes, it was positive because it was universally loved for its ugliness, because of its ugliness. And I think that when you have that kind of tension, it makes for a very like rich and delightful strategy and creative. And I know Lisa and I worked on that one together. It just was like, it all just fell into place very seamlessly because of that.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
Wonderful example. Now, Margie, how do you work alongside creative and production to really ensure that the final output stays true to the strategy while still evolving through the process as a whole?
Yeah, I think, all of us have kind of said this in one way or another, but just continue to have that dialogue and being that voice on my end, being that voice for the audience along the way. I talked in the beginning about my deep love for fun and silliness, but sometimes the strategist also has to be the person who comes in and says, like, are we losing the plot here? Like, are we getting too far away from our original intention? And kind of helping the team figure out a way to get that idea back on track. I remember seeing somewhere this analogy of a strategist is like a lighthouse. We're here to kind of guide and help the team see through the fog. So I definitely see myself as that part of our team.
That's such a beautiful comparison. It honestly makes me think of when I'm not very good at bowling and I always need like the bumpers to just get me as
Yeah.
close to a strike as possible, because without them, it probably wouldn't happen. So, when you look at where social platforms are headed these days, how do you see the role of strategy evolving in the coming year?
Yeah, I think we're at this really interesting juncture in social and in the industry where brands are exploring these more creative formats. I think that Built Roomies account is a really great example of this. It's like a sitcom account on TikTok, and it's a way for Built, who is a credit card company that you can use a card to pay for rent, among other things. But they use this account to like relate to their audience and eventually be there when the consumer needs whatever they're offering. So at the same time that we're seeing this like push for greater creativity, the tech innovation that we're experiencing in the last couple of years has put us on this track towards like optimizations and output and like getting everything out. And I think while we probably thought that cultural leaders transformed into like little AI babies or like rabbits jumping on trampolines or like any of these other kind of silly AI videos that we're seeing online were funny for a while, I think that people are starting to feel really fatigued by AI and they don't want to see it on their social feeds, and it's creating this really interesting reaction. Rachel Carton has done a lot of writing about this in her newsletter, link in bio, and I agree with her that brands are going to need to show more of this kind of like proof of reality content, things like roomies that require more investment, but ultimately some more trust because they are rooted in human nature. Like they feel very real. They feel like they were actually, conceived by a human being. More of that like kind of quality content over that sheer output, as I was kind of talking about before. So yeah, that's something that we're kind of working through in our strategies, especially in platforms like Substack. And I know Vine is coming back, and I think all of this is not to say that AI can't have a place in our process, but I think not losing those things that make content feel really real and tangible and have that human component to it.
Yeah, and Margie, I read this. I've been doing some reading, and I read this data point that 67% of consumers think that the key to the best brand and is basically being honest and being unbiased. And so I think that there's something really interesting that's happening here with the AI of it all. And I think AI really becoming more of like how we look at workflow automations. Right. And so Marge, exactly what you're saying. I think it's about real stories, real people,
Yeah, totally. I know. I was just seeing something on TikTok this weekend about that. There's like an AI song that's going viral out there, and people are finding out that it's AI and they're like up in arms. They're like upset about it. So it's interesting. It's like we want it to be a tool for our creation, but not be the thing that's actually creating.
That's so true. I know the exact song you're talking about, and it's really catchy. I was also disappointed to hear that, but yeah, there's a lot of controversy in the music industry about how it might completely derail the path of what's expected from what artists are creating, / can something that was created by a human but not created by a human be award worthy? It's going to be an interesting even coming months, let alone coming years.
Yeah.
But I'm just so glad I got to have all of you here to just unpack all of this, because I know that it's so important to hear, like you were saying, Sarah, the real human authentic story behind it, because y'all are the pulse of what makes the magic happen. So I have to leave you with one more question and want to pick all of your great minds on this one. So if there's one more thing you wish that brands could understand about what it really takes to make impactful social creative, what would it be?
I would say it's okay to fail. I think especially in the world of organic everyday social, like this is your chance to just take a bunch of calculated risks. Margie, you talked a lot about it. Just the audience is going to tell you things that you can't even predict to a degree. So put something out there. If you even have the smallest inkling of like, maybe this is crazy, but like we think something is there, like that you've sat in on all the strategy conversations and all of that. Like as creatives, like you got to trust your gut sometimes and put it out there, see the fan reaction, and then see if it takes off or if it falls flat, or if someone comments like we want more of this and people jump on board, then you know where to take things after that, because we really, all of us, we don't know what the algorithm is going to be into one day or the next, or society. So just go for it, have fun.
I think it's really about not leaning into one way to make content, right? It's got to be mixed media. We got to use creators, you got to use influencers, and shoot your content on high fidelity cameras, on iPhones, like do animation, do design, like really spread it across and be innovative and be different to break through the noise. Don't fall into the trap of trying to do what everybody else is doing. Do what makes sense for your brand and your consumers.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that, and I think we're saying a lot of the same things. I think as we're moving towards social as a form of entertainment, brands just need to be creative and choose different ways to reach their audiences, try different formats, try the unexpected, and be willing to embrace more awareness-driven stuff. Not being so focused on conversion. People are going to be so mad at me for saying that, but I think awareness can really go a long way in the age of social.
It's so true. Y'all hit on every and any point I could possibly make / that the internet would wholeheartedly support. So thank you for joining today and sharing all of your great insights and a true behind the scenes look of what goes on in the movement curtain. And I can't wait to have everyone back for another chat. So until next time.
Thanks.